Welcome to today's episode where we uncover some of the strangest and most enduring legends hidden along the windswept shores of North Carolina. This is 4 Bizarre Legends of the Outer Banks. Let's begin. The Outer Banks of North Carolina are a chain of barrier islands just off the coast of what's known as the Old North State. They're famous for their beautiful, unspoiled beaches, places that attract tens of thousands of visitors every year. But there's more to these islands than just scenic beauty. They're also steeped in rich, sometimes haunting history. In fact, that history stretches all the way back to 1587, almost 100 years before Jamestown. This was where the infamous pirate Blackbeard met his end. It was also the launch site for the first flight of the Wright brothers. And believe it or not, that's just the beginning of the strange energy that seems to permeate the Outer Banks. The unsolved mystery of the Lost Colony. Let's travel back to the 1500s when Queen Elizabeth I ruled over England. At the time, Spain had already been present in the New World for almost a century, and King Philip of Spain had a notoriously rocky relationship with England's queen. Determined not to be outdone and eager to secure Britain's position in the New World, Elizabeth sought to establish her own colony across the Atlantic. The first British settlement was a military group sent to Roanoke in 1584. It didn't last. The soldiers, unprepared for life in the wild, quickly abandoned the settlement and caught rides back to England on departing vessels. A second attempt came in 1585, but again, the soldiers abandoned the colony and went home. Then in 1587, Elizabeth tried a different approach. No more military groups. This time, she sent over 120 colonists, men, women, and children. These people were ready to make a permanent home in the New World. But the first year was hard. Most of the colonists were lesser nobles or upper commoners, people unfamiliar with farming, building houses, or surviving in rough conditions. It didn't take long before supplies ran dangerously low. The governor, John White, decided he had to return to England for more resources. It wasn't an easy decision. His daughter, Eleanor Dare, had just given birth to Virginia Dare, the first English baby born in the New World. But supplies were critical, and so he set off for home. Once in England, White found that war had broken out between England and Spain. Supplies and ships were tied up for the war effort, and White couldn't get back to Roanoke for another 2 years. When he finally returned, he found the colony completely abandoned. No colonists, no bodies. Their belongings were still there, undisturbed, but the people were gone. There was only one clue, the partial word C-R-O carved into a tree. It was believed to refer to Croatoan, the name of a nearby native tribe. But despite searching, White and his men found no trace of the colonists or the Croatoan tribe. To this day, no one knows what happened to the lost colony. But a local legend offers a clue. They say that on moonlit nights, a white doe appears on the island of Roanoke. Some believe it's the spirit of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World, forever roaming the land where her colony vanished without a trace. The appetite of Jockey's Ridge. Now let's move on to another tale, one of a living, moving sand dune with a hunger for buildings. Jockey's Ridge is a massive sand dune that's believed to be over 5,000 years old. It covers about 426 acres and is named after the wild horses that once roamed the area. But its size and age aren't what make it strange. The weird part? The dune moves. In fact, locals say you can actually see it shift. Back in 1838, a grand hotel was built near Jockey's Ridge. It had 2 stories, 200 rooms, a ballroom, a bowling alley, and more. There was even a mule cart to take guests to the beach. At the time, salt air was considered healthy, and people from all across the country came to stay in the luxurious hotel. The hotel thrived for almost a decade. Even after a fire burned it to the ground, a new, bigger hotel was built on the same site. The guests never stopped coming. But then, in the late 1850s, something unexpected happened. The sand of Jockey's Ridge began to move. At first, it was just a little sand, easy to haul away, but the mounds kept growing. Eventually, the sand was so massive that it was impossible to remove. The hotel tried to adapt. They offered discounts to guests willing to dig their way in and out of their rooms. Shovels were provided. Still, the sand kept coming. Eventually, the Grand Hotel vanished under 100 feet of sand. Today, there's no visible sign of it, but locals insist it's still there, hidden just beneath the surface of the dune, and history has a way of repeating itself. In the 1980s, an entire golf course was swallowed by the same dune. Now, even a nearby church is being slowly consumed by the sands of Jockey's Ridge. The Sea's Revenge, the legend of Theodosia. Cape Hatteras is infamous among sailors. They call it the graveyard of the Atlantic, and not without reason. Thousands of ships have sunk in these waters. Why? A deadly combination of unpredictable weather and ever-shifting sand. Unlike rocks, sand is soft, but it moves. That makes it treacherous for ships, which can be torn open if they hit the wrong patch of seabed. Founding father Alexander Hamilton knew the dangers of the sea well. He had grown up around ships, so one of his first major actions after gaining political influence was to erect a lighthouse at Cape Hatteras. At the time, it was called Hamilton's Light. Today, it's known as the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. But then came the duel. Hamilton's death at the hands of Aaron Burr is legendary, and according to local folklore, the sea itself took revenge for what happened. Aaron Burr never went near Cape Hatteras in his lifetime, but his daughter, Theodosia Burr, did. In the 1800s, land pirates roamed the beaches. They carried lanterns up and down the dunes, pretending to be the light from a lighthouse. Unsuspecting ships, seeing the false signal, would steer toward shore, only to crash on the hidden sand dunes. That's what happened to Theodosia's ship. The pirates boarded the wrecked vessel and stripped it down, killing many crew members in the process. Theodosia survived, but something inside her broke. Legend says she lost her mind. She clung to a painting of herself, obsessed with it, though she no longer knew who she was or what was happening. The pirates, disturbed by her madness, took her in. They didn't know who she was, only that she was insane and deeply attached to that portrait. For decades, Theodosia was passed from family to family. As each guardian died or moved away, someone else would take her in, along with the portrait. Then one night, very old and ill, Theodosia wandered out into the sea and vanished. Her portrait was eventually given to a visiting doctor who had connections on the mainland. Only then did people realize who she truly was. Locals believe the sea took Theodosia as revenge, not just for her own fate, but for her father's role in Alexander Hamilton's death. Miracle of St. Andrew's by the Sea. Our final story is one of faith and maybe, just maybe, a miracle. In 1916, a church was planned and constructed on the sound side of the Outer Banks. It was called St. Andrew's by the Sea, and it stood a few hundred feet from where the modern version of the church stands today. With a budget of less than $1,000, the project depended entirely on local volunteers. The result was beautiful. An intricately carved interior with wrought iron and a large bulbous doorway that tapered into a shape reminiscent of Middle Eastern architecture. But they ran into a problem. They had built the doorway, but had no money left for a door. The church stood open and vulnerable to the elements. So the congregation and the reverend did what they could. They prayed for a solution. That night, a nor'easter blew in. The storm was violent. The reverend feared his doorless church would be destroyed. 4 days later, after the storm had passed, the reverend ventured out to assess the damage. He hadn't gone far when he came across something remarkable. Among the wreckage and cargo from wrecked ships lay a door. But not just any door. It was the exact size and shape they needed. And despite the storm, it was in pristine condition, so much so that it looked like it had never been used. The door fit perfectly, and it stayed on the church until it burned down in the 1960s. Today, the rebuilt St. Andrew's by the Sea includes pointed windows, added as a reminder of the original church's miracle. Outer Banks are more than just a stretch of beautiful shoreline. They're soaked in strange, sometimes eerie history, stories that have persisted for centuries. While the legends we explored today are among the most famous, they're far from the only ones. From phantom ships and mysterious disappearances to living dunes and miraculous storms, the Outer Banks have long had a unique relationship with the sea. A relationship that has shaped its stories, its people, and its myths. Perhaps it's the isolation that preserved these tales, keeping them untouched by the outside world. Or perhaps there's something more mysterious at work. Whatever the case, one thing is clear. The Outer Banks are a place where history and legend live side by side, and where the line between the two is often hard to see. Thanks for listening.